I wanted to say thank you for everyone that participated of the dojo yesterday. It was very nice to see everyone engaged and building the solution as a team. Now, if you missed the event, here is a quick recap. The event started with an overview of the agenda. Following that, my colleague Jake Goldfield went through the problem statement, which was about a multinational corporation that was trying to do a POC with Nomad. Jake showed a diagram with the solution that the attendees would be building during the event. Once they understood what they were going to be building, our special guest co-host Jackie Greenrod gave everyone a quick intro to Nomad. During this intro, she explained what Nomad is and how it works, and also she made a lot of comparison between Nomad and Kubernetes. Once the attendees had an idea of what they're going to be building and had an introduction to Nomad, it was time to start working on the solution. The attendees started by going to an AWS account that we provided, and each team, they had their own user. After that, they just loaded their Cloud9 environment. In the first phase of the challenge, they had to install Nomad on their Cloud9 environment, which was pretty straightforward, and then after that, they had to run Nomad in development mode. And that was just a warm-up to get them familiar with basic Nomad commands. Then in phase 3 is where the fun began. In phase 3, they had to create some sort of definition file where they would declare a job that would deploy a front-end application. And that's where they would define the job, the group, the task, the driver, all that. Once that was done, they just had to plan the job first. This is like Terraform. And then after that, they could run it. After confirming that the front end was running, it was time to learn how to create a cluster with Nomad. The first step was to write a configuration file for the server, and that's where they would define things like the log level, the data directory, or how many servers the cluster expected to have. Then after that, they could just run the server pointing at this configuration file. That was the server, but then they had to do the same thing for the client. So they wrote a configuration file for the client. Once that was done, they could just run the client and the client would start communicating with the server automatically. And to make sure that everything was working, they just loaded the Nomad UI. In phase 5, they had to modify the job file for the front end so that the front end had a static port assigned to it, and that way the front end could be reached from the instance. To learn a little bit about scalability Nomad, in phase 6, they had to define a scaling stanza where they would set the minimum number of containers and the maximum number of containers. However, at this point, it was not possible to scale the front end due to the static port being allocated. Then what they had to do in phase 7 was to modify the job file so that the front end could use dynamic ports and not a single static port. In phase 8, they wrote a job file for console so that console could be deployed to the cluster to allow service discovery and monitoring. And this is where they learned how to deploy an application to run outside a container. So in this case, console would run on the host. And after planning and running, they could go to the client and just run a PS and they would see console running. After confirming that console was running, it was time to register the front-end application with console so that the load balancer that they're going to deploy in phase 11 could find the front end easily. Then after running, they can just go to the Nomad client and just run console catalog services -tag so they could see the tags and they would see the front-end application there. But in phase 10, things weren't working yet because the front-end application was listening on port 8080, so they had to introduce an environment variable to change the port. On phase 11 is where they deployed a load balancer so that the front-end application could be reached via the internet. For this challenge, they worked with Fabio, which is a fast, modern load balancer that works very well with console-managed applications. Then after planning and running Fabio, they were able to go to the web browser and access the front end. And if they change the port, they can also access Fabio. Finally, on phase 12, they learned about Canary Deployments. So they deployed a new version of the front-end application. And if they went to the Nomad UI, they could see the Canary was running. Then after confirming everything was fine, they could just promote the job. And they would see the new version running. Now, if you missed the event and you'd like to know how to build a solution in details, I'm going to be doing a live stream on Twitch next Monday, September 21st at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'll be showing you step by step how to create the solution that you just saw. If you want to follow along, it's very easy. So head over to twitch.tv/dojo with Renan. Right now, you won't find much activity here because I'm just starting this channel, But if you click on the About section, you're going to find more information about the channel. Here on the left, you can see that there is already a countdown for my first live stream. So if you want to learn how all these new technologies nowadays can work together and how you can build solutions with them, please consider hitting the little purple follow button here on the right, and that will be a huge help for me to grow this platform even more.